Mr. Raju Subramaniam, dear friends, first of all, my greetings to all Rotarians, and I'm delighted to see such a distinguished assembly of people here this morning. For me, it's always a pleasure to come back to Bengaluru. I think some of you may know I spent at least part of my early years here. And I thought today, as you come to the conclusion of your event, perhaps I should speak to you about India, about the changes in India, about the changes and the impact that it has for our neighboring countries, because I understand that some of you are from other countries in the neighborhood, and actually the impact it has on the world as well. Now, it's often easier to speak about what lies ahead. You can in a sense indulge yourself, but I want to speak about what's behind us in the last decade, and with a reason. And the reason is that what we have done in the last decade is actually the foundation of what lies ahead of us in the next quarter century. So there is a direct connection between our achievements and our capabilities and our aspirations and our dreams. For those of us who are from India, I think looking at the last decade is also in many ways a reminder of what we ourselves are capable of when we have the leadership, when we have the motivation, when we have the drive. And for the world, I think the last decade is also because as societies, as individuals far away today see India in stronger terms on the radar, they will want to know a little bit more about India. What has happened in India? Why has it happened in India? How has it happened in India? Now, any account of what has been done, it can meander in different directions. So I thought to myself, okay, last 10 years, what are the 10 big things which have happened in the last 10 years? And then share those thoughts with you. What were those 10 were a mix of challenges, some very big ones, some opportunities, some achievements, and they actually are spread into many domains. So in many ways, I would say that they represent all-round progress. They also tell us in a 360 way what lies ahead of us. So let me start really with the first big challenge of the last decade. And that challenge was the COVID. I start with the COVID because, for a very good reason, it was called a once-in-a-century happening. Literally, it happened 100 years before this current round. Now, when one looks at how different societies coped with COVID, I myself was one of the ministers who was part of a small group who were charged to monitor what was happening, to make recommendations, to set in place responses for the government and for the public health system. But I also had the opportunity to travel around the world at a time when actually travel was pretty much at a standstill. And what I saw at that time, one, was the rapidity of the Indian public health system. That when COVID first hit India, Many of you would remember the January of 2020 when we first started getting worried about something which was at that time seemed far away, and how rapidly it came to overtake our lives. And at that time, I'm sure like most, like me, most of you would not have seen a PPE or known what a ventilator was, or realized the necessity for producing masks. And we actually began with a situation where the challenge seemed completely overwhelming. And yet, within a few months, what we saw was, given the leadership, given the determination, given a collective response, actually we were able to deal with it. And it was obviously something, I'm sure there's not a single person here who's not had COVID or not lost someone known to them to COVID. But the fact is that as a society, as a nation, we were able to cope with it and meet the challenge by building capacities at a very, very rapid pace. Now, that was just the start. The next year, 2021, was the year of the vaccine. Now again, different countries in the world made vaccines. But I could again say, as someone following it closely, that the scale at which we made it, the quality at which we made it, the rapidity at which we made it, actually made it very unusual. Now, we of course made vaccines. We not just made vaccines during that period, we also invented a vaccine. It was a case where our pharmaceutical industry responded, but our scientists also responded, our researchers responded. And many countries at that time had vaccines. They didn't have an organized system of vaccination. And here again, actually India stood out, that we were able to vaccinate, put 2.5 billion doses in people's arms, largely because we had digitally organized ourselves. So when we think of that period, don't just think of PPEs and masks. Think vaccines. Think COVID platforms. Think of the fact that for us it was so natural that you got a shot in the arm, and by the time you left, you had something on your phone to say, okay, that's done, and I'm in a position to show other people. Now, as COVID progressed, we actually had another challenge, which was the demand for medical oxygen. And, again, that probably in many ways was the most difficult period of the COVID. But sitting where I was, I could actually see the entire system at work. The system, to give you an example, the demand for oxygen was largely in cities because that's where people lived, or in places where there was population. The oxygen production was mostly at industrial sites. Even those which we got from abroad would come into a port. We actually had a situation where we would move things at night by train, have the Air Force pick up cylinders, take it back by flight so that we could actually build that kind of cycle. So the Air Force was at work, the railway system was at work, every enterprise of this country which made oxygen stepped forward. There were people who shut down the business in order to give oxygen. So I say all this because to me, that once in a lifetime showed a once in a century response also from India. And that holds enormous promise as we look 25 years ahead. A promise not just for us, but actually for the entire world. Because again, at a time when a lot of countries first said that they would complete their vaccination before they looked to do anything abroad, we were one of the few who actually were sharing vaccines even while we were vaccinating. And we gave vaccines to 99 countries across the world and 2 UN organizations. And I will tell you, today, I mean, you can understand, okay, we have neighbors, it's human to share with your neighbors. But there are countries in the Caribbean, there are countries in Central America, there are countries in the Pacific, faraway countries, little countries, who till today tell you that we would not have got vaccines but for India. So let me shift gears and move to a completely different subject, but maybe not that different, the economy. You will hear today talk in the world about how India is a bright spot in the global economy. And there's a good reason for people to say that. I think we have last 2 quarters posted extremely impressive rates of growth, 7.6% in the last quarter. But, what does the world see when it looks at India today? It sees an economy which in the last 10 years has moved from the 10th place to the 5th place, where actually the flow of foreign investments has doubled, where the exports, again in the last decade, have gone up by about 75%, where food grain production is up, where 135 million people is more than the population of Japan, came out of absolute poverty in the last 5 years. So think about it. And we have today, because why I said it's not unrelated, a lot of countries in the world are still struggling to recover from the COVID, struggling socially, struggling economically. And today, it is not just that the Indian economy is doing well. It is that the Indian economy, thanks to the right decisions made during a period of stress, during COVID, actually has been able to stage the kind of bounce back that you are witnessing. And that has happened because a combination of policies today have come together to give us this new economic momentum. It has been easier to do business, how to de-bureaucratize this country, the idea of a national logistics, national infrastructure policy, which is called Gati Shakti, a strong and sustained support for our farming sector, for our farmers, and a very committed campaign, I would say, to promote Make in India. Today, it's all these. Each one of them may look different to you. Some of you may have an interest in one aspect and not in the other. But the totality of all of this today, that is what is giving us the tailwind with which the Indian economy is forging ahead. And, we see the difference every day in our lives. But I emphasize it, because we see it every day in our lives, we tend to take it for granted. Most of you would be flying. I don't know to how many of you it would have occurred that in the last 10 years, the number of airports in this country have doubled. That we had 75 airports 10 years ago. We have doubled the number today. Or the fact that the number of cities with metros, we had 5 cities with metros, today we have 20. Again, we all drive in roads. If you look at the highway expansion, so we see the changes around us. We tend to take it as a given, which in some ways is good because it then becomes a benchmark to go further. But I must tell you that when the world sees, a country of this size moving with this kind of rate of transformation, it is something which is taken very, very seriously. Now, I'm not the health minister, though I was part of the group. I'm not the finance minister, though I talk about the economy. But I am the foreign minister. So let me talk about diplomacy. I'll give you a third reason today why I can say to ourselves that India has changed profoundly in the last decade. And that reason is how we handled the G20. The G20 is like a World Cup of diplomacy. Okay, the 20 biggest, strongest players come together. In this case, it wasn't just 20, we had 9 other countries as a guest. We had 14 international organizations. So you can say in many ways that a very, the most influential, the most powerful, the most consequential countries of the world were gathered around the table. Now, when we took up the presidency, which was almost exactly a year ago, honestly, people didn't have too much expectations of it. There was a very sharp divide in the world between Western countries and Russia because of the Ukraine issue. There was very deep anger in the developing world, in Africa and Asia and Latin America, that their problems had been overlooked by Europe. And there was a sense actually that the entire G20 process had gone off the rails. Now, what we were able to do in our G20 in terms of diplomacy was actually to bridge all these divides, to find a common ground for countries who were otherwise arguing among themselves, who found their positions very difficult to reconcile. But we were able to bridge it. So the G20 in many ways, I would say, has actually been the diplomatic achievement of this year. Not just because we could get everybody to agree, but on what we agreed. That we were able to get the most powerful countries of the world, including ourselves, to show a new commitment to resourcing sustainable development, to promoting green growth, to ensuring that the international institutions like the World Bank and the IMF would lend more prolifically. And we were able to get something as complicated and divisive as the digital infrastructure, where the American model, the European model, the Chinese model, the Indian model is so different. We were able to get them around the table to accept today that the digital infrastructure is actually one of the critical avenues for global progress. Now, since I am on digital and I am in Bengaluru, allow me to dwell on that at some length. When I go abroad and meet my counterparts or, business people, think tank people, media people, I used to get asked a very different set of questions 5, 10 years ago, even more different 20 years ago. Today, much of the attention of the world is actually about what is happening digitally in India. And again, I say this because we have become so digital, we don't remember a time when the world was not digital. That we forget that a lot of this was 5 years old or 10 years old. And I was reminded of it because just a few years ago, some of us put our thoughts together to produce a book. And I'm a kind of a curious kind of guy. I like reading other people's chapters. So one of the chapters I read was by Nandan Nilekani. I think there's nobody in this room who doesn't know or know of Nandan Nilekani. He's one of the key people who started the IT business in this country. Nandan Nilekani speaks about how he took the idea of Aadhaar. This was more than 10 years ago. He took the idea of Aadhaar around the country. He met a number of chief ministers and he tried to persuade them that this is a very powerful tool here which could be put to good use. The one chief minister, according to him, who immediately understood it, who actually sort of cleared his desk and spent a lot of time talking, trying to grasp its power, was the person who today happens to be the Prime Minister of India. And you must reflect on what the digital has done for us. That backbone, because digital is today our backbone, that backbone is the backbone on which this country rests today. The backbone on which services are delivered, the backbone on which benefits are given, the backbone on which you get your entitlements, the backbone on which you got your COVID certificate. It is our digitalization which has created this transformation of India. Now, let me give you the scale of what this digitalization has done. Suppose I told you 10 years ago that, guess what? You've just elected a Prime Minister and his government is going to give you a food support system which is bigger than the population of Europe and North America, which is able to connect people to banking, because banking is a very key part of transferring benefits, which will capture a set of people in the banking world, which would be 1/3 of this country, which is today out of banking, which would have a scheme which many of you know about, stopping burning firewood and getting gas cylinders, to a population bigger than the population of Germany, which would build houses and, given our family size, which would house in 10 years more than the population of Japan. You would not have believed me. If I told you that you would end up with knowing which houses to connect to electricity, which houses need piped water into their homes, which farmers are deserving of the extra benefit which they do when they do their sowing. This is today actually the transformation of India. That when you have social benefit schemes which cover 800 million, 500 million, 400, our health scheme today, Ayushman Bharat, today covers 500 million people. Our food support, Anna Yojana, covers 800 million people. The Mudra loans cover 415 million people. The banking, the Jan Dhan Yojana is in excess of 400 million people. So, as I said, even the water connections, we've done 100 million new households, which means 500 million people have piped water in their houses which they didn't have 10 years ago. So, the one today, I would say, exemplary message that we send out to the world, that a country like India, because typically when people speak about social welfare systems, about getting benefits, they talk about middle income countries. They talk about countries where it's, average income is $10,000. Today, at a fifth of that or a fourth of that, we are actually creating a revolution in our own lifetimes. And we are doing it so naturally and driven actually by this digital backbone that many of us actually are not even fully cognizant of what is happening. Now, it isn't just that our existence which is changing. I think we ourselves are. We are changing because we see today how this environment has allowed talent, skills, innovation to flower. Perhaps the single achievement which has imprinted itself in the consciousness of the world is the landing of the Chandrayaan lunar mission. A landing with which Bengaluru is particularly and specially, associated with. And I had the privilege of coming with the Prime Minister when he went to meet the ISRO team which had done that. Now, I mention Chandrayaan because it stands out, it is impactful. But again, look at the other changes which are taking place. Yesterday we had the Sultan of Oman paying a state visit to India. He was very fascinated by what he heard, not just about our space program, because we are discussing space cooperation, also about drones. That today, if you see, this is a country which has not just created a drone policy, a drone technology, a drone business, but which has applications where today drones are being used in farms to help farmers to do land surveys, to help with infrastructure, to secure our borders. So the power of technology, today the creativity of talent that we are seeing, this has actually percolated through the society. When I go to universities today, and particularly if it is a technical institution, instead of necessarily producing, the gold medalist of that particular year, people actually introduce me, the university introduces me to students who either have interesting projects or who actually have patents to their names. And the fact is that in this last 10 years, our average, 10 years ago, we did 6,300 patents. Last year, we did 34,000 patents. That is the change we are talking about. So, the point I'm making is, today, in multiple ways, it is social forces, it is the march of technology, it is the vision of a leadership. It is actually the mobilization and motivation of people. And what it does is it has created today a larger ethos where every part of the system is today trying to do their own work, their own responsibilities better than they could before. An example, I fall back again on my own domain, my own ministry. Suppose every one of you has a passport, right? I would say you would have got it without too much difficulty. Maybe an odd case here or there, but by and large, it should have been a fairly smooth process. Now think of that same passport exercise 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Ask yourself, how difficult was it then? And what has changed? I think you would know it is easier, but you may not know what has changed. And I'll tell you what has changed. What has changed is, 10 years ago, the foreign ministry across the country had 77 places where you could go and give your passport application. Today, we have 527, an increase of 450. But hang on, I haven't finished yet. That 450 did not come necessarily from making new buildings and hiring new people. What we did was we repurposed post offices. We repurposed post offices with the postal employees, saying, the era of post is now over, the era of passports is now on, so why don't you join us in this passport endeavor? Now, think about it. It seems very simple when you do it. And yet, I can tell you, as someone who's worked in the government all my life, getting government organizations to change habits and work with each other is the most difficult thing. So, I mention this to you because what is happening today across the country. Again, let me give you an example from education. every day in the last 10 years, 2 new colleges have opened in this country. Think about it. Every week in the last 10 years, a new university has opened. So when people today speak about Indian talent, Indian creativity, what difference we could make, when we look 25 years ahead and look back last 10 years, today we have got ready for the global workplace. That Indian talent, Indian creativity, Indian skill will be in demand across the world. And I am seeing today that many countries who hitherto were very sort of careful, cautious about people from India coming there, today are actively seeking us out to reach agreements. I mean, in this last 1 year, I have signed agreements with Germany, with Austria, with Australia, with Portugal, with Italy, for the mobility of people. Because Indian talent today is in demand across the world. But Indian talent is in demand, and in a sense, we can make a global impact only if we actually do our homework, if we prepare that talent, if we give them all the opportunity that they are legitimately entitled to at home. And that is today happening. It is happening starting right from the schools. That, the early campaigns which some of you would remember about building bathrooms, about educating daughters, Beti Padhao. Today we are seeing schooling rates go up, school retention rates go up, girl-child education go up. We are seeing gender gaps close. So the change starts right from the start. And that socio-economic transformation of India, of which we have had very substantial progress in the last 10 years, that is really what is going to propel us in the next 25. Now, obviously, for any society, securing itself is also important. And in different ways, I would say we are a country who have more than our fair share of challenges. Some of them come from our neighborhood. Some of them, I have to admit, are created by ourselves. When it comes to the border, whether it is standing up, sending our troops to the China border, or settling the border with Bangladesh, or responding to cross-border terrorism on the Western Front, you're all aware of this. But some of it is also long-standing issues which we ourselves could have settled. One of them was actually the Article 370 issue in regard to Kashmir. Today, when go to Kashmir, it's a very different Kashmir that we see. It is a Kashmir of tourism. It is a Kashmir of economic growth. It is one where actually terrorist incidents have come down. And while I would certainly regard, the abrogation of Article 370 as one of the big achievements of this term, I also sometimes ask myself, why did it take us so long? So, a part of looking back is also a degree of self-reflection and, driving yourself to keep looking at the challenges, because we sometimes take achievements for granted. We also sometimes take problems for granted. So it's important that we look at old problems with new eyes, and certainly in this case, because there was a strong conviction to deal with a situation where one state of this country was kept outside the national mainstream, at last that challenge was addressed. Now, I could, speak about other ways we have made an impact. There are big global issues. We're all concerned about climate change. We worry about food security. Especially last year, there have been food shortages in the world. There are big energy issues in the world. The challenge of terrorism is there. And again, We have, in the last 10 years, also distinguished ourselves by the power of our ideas. People speak about solar energy. The most effective international organization today in that is something called the International Solar Alliance, which was proposed by Prime Minister Modi in Paris during COP21. We speak about responding to disasters. Again, we have pushed forward a global coalition, how to build infrastructure to deal with disasters. There is a concern about food production and food security. And you have seen how much the campaign to grow and eat millets. You know, I'm in Ragi country. I think this is a place where it should be self-evident. But how a campaign to grow millets today is beginning to make a difference, not just in India. You know, you can see it in other geographies where actually millets was a traditional food. So the sum total of what I want to share with you today is India, through its own, I would say, process of transformation, we are rediscovering ourselves today. We have the capability, we have the talent. At the moment we get that leadership, the moment we motivate ourselves, the moment we work as a collective, we are actually able to surprise even ourselves by the extent of our achievements. And the natural beneficiaries of this are actually the countries around us. You know, in the last few years, if we have struggled with COVID, many of our neighbors were much smaller. You know, they didn't have the capacities to produce, which we did. They would have been left out when it came to vaccine access if we had not stepped forward. You had a country like Sri Lanka, which actually went into a very deep economic crisis. And while the rest of the world, including other institutions who are supposed to respond to it, were debating what to do, it was actually India which stepped forward. It was our extended hand which actually at the darkest moment for Sri Lanka made a critical difference. So, and again, it's not simply a crisis response. Those of you who travel in our neighborhood will actually see the other changes, the structural changes, the deep changes which are taking place. The fact that you can travel more easily, that there are railway lines to our neighboring countries, there are more roads to our neighboring countries, there's power grid connectivity, that there is waterway connectivity, that business is using the ports and the facilities of our neighbors. And they too are using ours. So India's prosperity today is serving as a lifting tide for the entire region. And we have shown at moments of difficulty, whether it was vaccine supply, whether it was food supply, whether it was financial assistance, whether it was essential goods, that India is there for the neighborhood. It sends a great message to the neighborhood, but I can assure you, it is a message that resonates beyond. And that is why in international relations, like I told you, G20 was undeniably the diplomatic achievement of the year. But the concept of what is called Global South, that countries, developing countries come together and see how they can help each other. The fact that we have been able to assemble a lot of 125 such countries. And today, India's footprint is there in 600 projects across 78 countries in the world. You know, next time you travel anywhere in the world, you know, ask someone local, you know, what is it they know about India? And believe me, you'll be surprised. In fact, I am surprised because often I see business has got ahead of me. Some NGO has got ahead of me. There are cases, you know, where our doctors, our social organizations, our businesses, they've gone to the far corners of the world. So we are today creating a global footprint. But having said all of that, let me end with one last point. I've spoken about, you know, Make in India. Make in India is an economic expression of a larger outlook which we all know as Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is self-reliant India. It is one where we care for our own traditions, for our own artisans, for our own people. There's a campaign called Vocal for Local, which encourages all of you, whenever you buy something, to first look closest home and see what it is that you would like to spend your money on. In the last few months, we also have started a campaign to actually support our craftsmanship. It was launched on Vishwakarma Day, and the idea is that Indian heritage, Indian craftsmanship, if we don't support it, over a period of time, it will start to fade out. I'm saying all of this because it is not enough for a country or a society to progress. It is equally essential, perhaps even more so, that we do so remembering who we are. That we not just remember who we are, not just value our own heritage, traditions and culture, but we also find ways of passing it on to the coming generations. So it could be Make in India, it could be the International Day of Yoga, it could be a campaign like Har Ghar Tiranga where we all raise our flags. It could be, as I said, the Vocal for Local. How do we take our food habits out? How do we take our music out? But the world is beginning to see the return to the international stage of a civilizational state. That this debate today, which shouldn't be a debate, but this point that India, when we say Bharat, Bharat means a society which is conscious of its culture, traditions and history, which in pursuit of progress does not forget what it is and where it came from, which will always have its culture and its identity and its beliefs and its values at the core of anything that it does. So as we look 25 years ahead, it is equally important that we progress, but we also progress on our terms, with our goals and our aspirations. Once again, I thank you all for today for allowing me the opportunity to present some of my thoughts, and I'd be delighted to respond to anything you have to say.
Okay, guys, if you want to ask questions, first question that comes is from a past president of Rotary International, Mr. K.R. Ravindran from Sri Lanka. Sir.
Hello.
Yeah.
Mr. Minister, you have a legion of fans around the world. I am one of them. I think you have more fans than Virat Kohli. Because Virat Kohli's fans are only among the cricket world, and your fans extend beyond that. But before I ask you a question, I want to usurp this opportunity to tell you on behalf of the people of Sri Lanka and the Rotarians of Sri Lanka how grateful we are for what you did. We, in fact, had an event in Colombo with the top people of the city simply saying, "Thank India," where I was a speaker. Throat is going. I realize the role you played and your finance minister, but you did so on behalf of all these people present here and the people of India. And for want of anything else, let me just say thank you. Now my question. When there is a problem in the world, when there is a calamity, Rotary plays a role, whether it's man-made or natural. And this is where your expertise comes in. But invariably, when we step in to do something, whether we help Israel or whether we help Gaza, whether we send aid to Ukraine or somewhere else, we have resistance, we have criticism coming from outside and from within, who say, we get caught up in this whole geopolitical situation. How would you say we handle this? Because you seem to be such a genius in holding United States off and balancing it with Russia. That's the question, sir.
First of all, let me say I'm also a fan of Virat Kohli. And, I admire him most of all because my line of work, whether it's politics or whether it's diplomacy, is a very competitive line of work. To me, he's distilled competitiveness when I see him there. But coming to Sri Lanka, look, I think what we did was what a good neighbor should do. And at that time, I can tell you, whether it was the finance minister or myself, and we went to the prime minister on this. I mean, for us, there was never, we saw with growing concern, how things were becoming more and more difficult. So I think we did the right thing. And I certainly hope that in some ways it's a message for others. I mean, we didn't do it because we wanted to message others. We did it because it was a natural thing, it was the right thing. And in my case, I've lived in Sri Lanka. I had a particular, I would say, attachment which grew out of it. Now, your question, how do organizations, in a sense, even countries, handle this kind of very polarized situation? I give you a few examples which might help you. When the Ukraine conflict started, we of course, from an Indian perspective, brought back about 19,000 Indian students who were there as part of something called Operation Ganga. But literally hundreds of thousands of refugees came out of Ukraine at that time to all the neighboring countries. I'm very proud of the fact that, at that time we got our Air Force, our airlines, our whole diplomatic corps, four of my ministerial colleagues went there. But one story which to me somewhere didn't quite get its due was how many Indian organizations actually went there to help. A lot of them did. People ran soup kitchens. People actually helped refugees who were coming out. So I've seen at times that, I understand this navigation in a polarized situation is not easy. Sometimes governments can help, but often I think, if you are well established, you have a reputation, you have a track record, I think even in a difficult situation, people will take a lot of that into account. And certainly today, I often encounter, I mentioned that, I encounter Indian NGOs who are doing very good work outside India. And I think the kind of goodwill that they build, because at the end of the day, in anybody's mind, a country is a person. They associate a face and a name with a country. And these people do a lot of good work. I'd keep encouraging you. If there's anything I can ever do for you, give me a shout. I'll be there.
Wow, what an answer. I thought president nominee, he's a president nominee, he'll be the president of Rotary International in 25-26. Mario Cesar from Brazil.
Minister Jaishankar, you just gave us a lesson for us foreigners on the reasons why India has been evolving so rapidly over the next decade. But coming from a country, Brazil, which is a partner with India on the BRICS, along with Russia and China and South Africa, what do you think of the future of BRICS?
I think well of it. I think it will grow. It will become, it will gain in influence. It will certainly gain in members because we have agreed to expand the BRICS by 6 more members the next year when we meet. But why would it grow? I think that's a reasonable question as well. Today, the world by itself is a very diverse place. Okay, we are 200 countries roughly in the world. There are so many cultures in the world. And what had happened over a period of time is that the domination of some countries and some cultures tended to suppress others. So not everybody got their due say, their due weight, their due role. And what BRICS tried to do was to say that, look, hey, we are there. The world cannot be run by 7 countries, which are from one part of one particular continent or 2 of them. So BRICS in a way is a message of diversity. It is a message of independence. It is a message that the natural, I would say, expression of cultures and economies and politics of the world must come forward. And that is why I think history in that sense would go in that direction. And I think BRICS will go along with that.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Bharat Pandya, may I request the sergeants, don't stand in the edge. Stand somewhere inside. There are people who are standing there. I think that there are 2 ladies standing there. I see somebody at the back. So just adjust yourselves. Dr. Bharat Pandya.
Raju bhai, if I may help, after Dr. Bharat, Raja Srinivasan had his hand up. Then
I've seen that. I've noticed
then
that.
the gentleman next to Harjeet and the 2 ladies there near the cameras. So that's the sequence.
Dr. Bharat Pandya is the vice chair of the Rotary Foundation.
Mr. Jaishankar, from being a top member of our bureaucracy to becoming a minister in the government, I'm sure that's a significant change. You must have faced a lot of challenges. If so, what are the challenges you faced from this significant change? And I have a second question. You talked about the number of passport offices going up from 77 to 527. I'm looking forward to the day when the Indian passport will guarantee us entry, visa-free entry to most countries of the world. What do you think needs to be done, and when will that day come?
Your first question, how did you make that transition? Honest answer, I didn't make the transition, somebody made it for me. So one day, I had an interim incarnation, by the way. I was briefly in business. I was in a corporate organization. It happened suddenly, but I didn't, look like any new, I would say, new profession. What do? You watch others around you. You learn from them. You make one part which I learned in my diplomatic profession: don't be too afraid to ask questions. That's one way of learning as well. So you kind of, I must have made some mistakes. I must have looked awkward at times. It wasn't for me necessarily that easy to discuss things about which I felt I didn't have a strong grip. But over a period of time, I think you can judge that better than me. The second question on the passports. I recently, I think Malaysia and Thailand have announced, and some of our neighbors, I think now you don't need visas. We are trying to grow it, But I would tell you, it will grow also when we also ensure that the mobility is legal. That's very important. That is why we are doing these mobility agreements. It is reassuring for people. I would expect, it will take time because our numbers are sometimes a little bit impressive, but I can see us moving there. Won't happen immediately, like many things, but I think the trajectory is there, moving in the right direction.
Thank you, sir. Gaurish, Raja Srinivasan, Manju Fadke, Kalpana Don, in that order. Come to the line, then once they finish, I'll catch your eye.
I'm Rotarian Raja Srinivasan, a past district governor from Chennai and also an industrialist. I am an extremely proud Indian who keep talking very high about India in all my speeches. Today you gave a lot of inputs for me to add. Thank you, sir, for that. Right from my childhood, India is a developing
question,
nation.
please.
Yeah,
Question,
yeah,
please.
coming to the, yeah,
Enough
yes,
people to ask.
yeah. A developing nation. And again, my wish is before I die, I would like to see India as a developed nation. What prevents us to reach there? And maybe Mahatma Gandhi dreamt about, Mahatma Gandhi always said India lives in our villages.
Speeches, yeah.
And villages, should we do more? Or what is the key area where we should concentrate to make India a developed nation? Thank you, sir.
Okay. First of all, make sure you live for the next 25 years, because that's the time I need to become a developed nation. The serious point here is, look, we did some big reforms in the early 90s, right? But what happened after that for the next 20 years, once we started to do enough to get out of a crisis, we did not keep reforming. So, people say that India does the reforms it must, not the reforms it should. There were many reforms which, on our own, voluntarily, we should have undertaken. If you take today, for example, girls' education, it did not require us a crisis to do that. Or if you say, Swachh Bharat, clean up India. If you look at these big campaigns, Digital India, Skill India, if you look at even what I spoke about, electricity or Har Ghar Jal, the water connection, each one of these should and could have been done had there been will, had there been vision, had there been leadership. But what has changed in the last 10 years? That you have someone, frankly, as ambitious, as obsessive, as driven as Prime Minister Modi. And it isn't, and you know what, to me, what he's actually been able to do is to bring out in each one of us. Each one of us wanted to do this. Somewhere in our minds, that desire was there, but nobody organized us, nobody motivated us, nobody pushed us. That is happening. So I am very sure that, in this, look, when I look year on year, as I said, a country where 2 colleges are coming up every day. I mean, we are going places. You can see that. I think we've got that momentum today. But we should never take our foot off the accelerator. I mean, this part of reform is never, compare yourself only with your own past. It has to be a peer group comparison. It has to be a target-driven. Set yourself ambitious targets. Try and reach those targets. And I think today, when Prime Minister talks, it's interesting. Today we are talking, saying, when will we become a developed nation? We didn't even talk like that 3 years ago. We were kind of resigned to the fact we were like that only. So that, to me, is the real big change. And I think he's fired up this society, the energies of this society. And I'm very confident that will propel us forward.
1 minute, one thing. Please ask a precise question. No remarks, please, because there are enough people who want to ask the questions. Manju.
Good morning. Actually, my question was preempted by my earlier speaker, but I'll still want to ask you one thing. I see you speaking with so much of pride about the nation.
Office 12:30.
What would be your advice for each one of us to speak with so much of pride for our nation? Because that's what I think is required today. Thank you.
Where are you from, if I may ask?
Pune.
Pune, okay. No, but look, I would say it's important for each one of us, not only in our nation, in other nations also. Because at the end of the day, who we are, what we think, what we believe, what is our, how we are. This is all part of our personality. And one of the concerns we have is in the name of globalization. You know, globalization is good. It is good if it means that there is more economic gains, there is more economic activity, but it should not lead to a dilution or erosion of our own personality. So I feel today that sense of pride for everybody, not just pride in the nation, even pride in what you do. You know, I spoke about this Vishwakarma campaign. You know, when you look today at, I have been to countries in the world, I don't want to mention it, where they have actually many of their arts and crafts and customs have gone. Because somewhere in the desire for modernity, they erase their own past. I think that is a mistake we should never make. So today, a lot of our debates, you know, we should be about technology, but we should also be about tradition. And how do we get technology and tradition to march in lockstep? I think that is what our pathway should be.
Raju, this side, Raju.
I'm looking, wait.
Yeah, there are 5 people already queued here.
I can't stand. Okay, stand. Now look, give me a minute.
I'll take those 5.
On the 5.
I'll take the timer.
Okay, the 5 there, the 2 or 3 standing here and this side, and nobody else now. With that, we finito. Too late to put up your hand. So only those who are standing for the questions now, in the order, finish one here, go there, one here, go there.
Can I say?
Yes, Kalpana.
Yeah. Namaskar, sir. I am Rotarian Kalpana from Assam in Northeast India. And as you are aware, we have also had our certain destabilizing forces. Rotary works in 7 focus areas, and one of them is peace and conflict resolution. But we find that the state governments, they do not use our pool of experience and trained people who are trained in some of the best universities in the world. Sir, I implore you to use your good office to see that the services of these peace fellows are used by various state governments. Thank you.
Let me take 3-4 questions. Can I take 3-4 questions together?
Next question. There.
Sir, Major Deepak Mehta from Raipur, Chhattisgarh. You made the country proud and you made us all smile. But you don't smile. How can we make you smile, sir?
He's smiling now.
That's when I asked the question then. How can we show our gratitude to make you smile, sir?
Hey, guys. Okay, who is here? Yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 questions, short one. When do you think we'll get a permanent seat in UN with the progress that India is making? And we are on a Rotary platform. Sir, your thoughts about Rotary International and the work being done by Rotary in India and opportunities for partnerships between GOI and Rotary in India. Thank you.
Rahul.
So it's true that we can't choose our neighbors. And as you say that India is trying to be good Samaritan to our neighbors. But the fact is that we do not enjoy a good relationship with our neighbors, most of the neighbors. So my question is that how can we afford, why isn't our focus in resolving the issues with the neighbors, and how can we afford to have a university with a country like China who has similar historical facts and also cultural heritage?
Will you answer all of them?
Okay. Maybe one more.
One more?
One more.
Okay, one more. Sharad Jain.
Sir, you talked about digital transformation, and I come from a digitally enabled industry, and our business has really thrived on the strength of initiatives that the government has taken. My query is, today the biggest challenge to the consumer confidence is one, online fraud, and second, issues of data piracy as well as privacy. So what is that the government is doing to take care of those concerns? Thank you.
Okay. Let me take the questions in that order. In terms of what Rotarians can do in working with the governments of their particular state or region, it's very hard, to sort of tell someone from far away to do something. I mean, often when there are such situations, Rotarians are networked, they are influential people. I'm sure in your own immediate milieu, you will be able to talk to people and see the natural inclination. Everybody is open to finding others who are supportive. If I'm doing something and somebody else is wanting to contribute, it's sometimes, governments sometimes have to be persuaded that there are wise people beyond the government also, or good people beyond the government. That can happen. But I would say keep at it. I certainly will help spread the good word. I mean, part of the reason I'm here is for that purpose. So I wish you well. And I think, obviously I have to just keep coming to Bengaluru and be with Rotarians to smile. I think you cracked that code very easily. On the Security Council, Security Council is like an old club where there are set members who don't want to let go of the grip, okay? So they want to keep control over the club, not very keen to admit more members, not too keen to have their practices questioned. In a way, it's a human failing, but I think today it is harming the world. It is harming the world because on key issues confronting the world, the UN is getting less and less effective. So, and I can also tell you the global sentiment. I mean, today, if you ask 200 countries in the world, do you want reform or don't you want reform? Very large number of countries would say, yes, we want reform. Because what was invented at a time when the membership of the UN was about 50 countries. So imagine a business which has grown 4 times, and yet you don't want to change the original promoter of the business. It's not fair. And I think there's a realization of that. So I'm sure it will happen. We will keep at it. But I do believe that history is on our side in that regard. About what Rotarians can do, again, I do believe that we are not just in a more globalized era, and the gentleman later talked about a more digital era. So what does globalization and digitization mean? It really means today that people who may have never left Bengaluru will be able to imagine what it's like to be in any corner of the world, and that things will happen in the world which in some way will affect our lives and our existence. And COVID itself was a very good example of that. So that period when you can say there is a wall, the wall is my own city or my state or my country or my region. The walls have all come down to differing degrees, and we have to adapt our existence today to this new kind of way of living collectively. And I feel in this, what is happening in the world should not only be left to governments and diplomacy and to UN and international organizations. There's a lot of space there today for civil society, for civic organizations, for people in the same line of business to deal with each other. So I would say there is a kind of in international civil society, today if India's presence is felt by, Indian government or India as a country gets the support of Indian civic organizations, I think it's something which is a great source, because we're a very vibrant democratic society, pluralistic society, and people appreciate, contributions in different spheres from India. On the question of neighbors, I don't agree with the premise of the question. There was a suggestion somehow that, we have a problem with many or most of our neighbors. I think that's simply not true. I mean, with most of our neighbors, if you see, take any metric, tourism, number of people wanting to come here, number of people studying here, how much business is being done, the cross-border investments, everything is going up. I know there are some neighboring relationships which are a problem, but I would suggest to you that, that the one with Pakistan is actually an exception. And if I look at the other relationship, and we began first with a colleague from Sri Lanka, I would say each one of our neighbors today actually has a lot of good experiences and a lot of good to say about India. Now, it's also natural with neighbors that there will be issues of difference. I think we should not expect that all our neighbors will agree with us on all issues every day. Even if you and I sit down together, we are bound to differ after 20 minutes of conversation. So it's something we must also be realistic in our expectations of our neighbors and not give them a sense that we are too demanding in this regard. On China, yes, I would say logically India and China as two old civilizations which are again becoming, coming to the center stage of international politics, there is a lot that we have in common. We would certainly like our relationship with China to be better than what it is today. But if things have taken a turn for the more difficult in the last 3 years, it's not because of us. It is because they have chosen not to observe the agreements on the border. But again, diplomacy is, however difficult your neighbors, however challenging they are, you never give up. We keep working at that relationship and hope that we can get something done better. And last question in this round on online fraud and data privacy. We are very, very concerned about data privacy, data security. And for this reason, this 25 years we are entering is also going to be the era of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence really means that your data in some way is going to go into a larger global matrix and become somebody else's business. So you better be careful where your data is going. Now, you can be careful on data privacy, which is that your own government, your own systems protect you. But we also, and there is a SOP for handling data in a society or a business. But there is also data security, which is others, with bad intent, actually often in violation of the law, try to access your data illegally. Now, today, ensuring, what is a challenge for any government on data? We want to protect privacy. We want to ensure security. We want to also create the basis for delivery, all the digitally enabled delivery that I spoke to you about. We want to make it easier to do business. We want to protect the nation. Now, we have to put all of this together. And a lot of our new laws and regulations and policies which we are looking at actually tries to address this area. Today, how to have trusted and transparent digital partners is one of the key challenges, not just economic challenge, not just technology challenge, it is actually a national security challenge. I think I can do one more round.
Yeah, one round. Okay, the last round, now 1 minute. Some people have been waiting there. Vinod, get 2 people from that group who were the first to come to the side. Just wait patiently till I complete what I have to say.
Hello.
I think Pratap Puranik has been there for some time. And then take this lady here and any one of them at the back. That's the final round, please. Yeah, please.
I am Raja Govind Swami from Tamil Nadu. With some irksome relationship with Canada after G20 summit and US joining on another allegation, how are we handling it? Is it going to be a confrontation or will it be negotiation so that our already existing smooth relationship continues? That's it, sir.
Can I get the next question?
Yes, sir. This is Dr. Pramod from Varanasi. Yes, sir. Is the government has any plans for the healthcare sector also to benefit from the digital revolution of the country?
Yes, next.
Hello, check.
Namaskara. I'm Kalpana from Bangalore. While in the international spotlight as a diplomat, you cannot be silent for long when consequential nations publicly open its arm for friendship with a strategic intent. Now, how do you, one, identify the breaking point, two, administer conflict resolution to yourself on the spot first, and three, discourse and deploy peace for Bharat?
Wait for a minute.
No problem.
Go on. Okay.
Namaskar, sir. It was wonderful to hear that a decade of digital revolution has resulted in informed and skilled people.
Question, please.
But the question is, while at Rotary, we are concentrating on environment and a focus on mental health, how is our nation deciding to have a strategic approach paper, an environment revolution for resulting mental peace in our future generation? Thank you.
Is that 5?
Yeah. One more. Last question.
One last question. Sorry, guys.
Honorable Sir, our country Bharat is progressing and marching to become the global power. Now, always the thought comes in my mind that how already developed countries can accept this, that a country, India, which was developing and in very short time to become a world power, will there be any hurdles that may get created to fulfill our dream to become Bharat as a superpower? Thank you.
Friends, running short of time, the Honorable Minister has to take a flight back. But before that, before he answers, I have to request two friends whom I have made over the past 3 months or 4 months. Sandeep, Raghu, please rise, both of you. Please rise. These two young men have facilitated this with me. Maybe give them a big round of applause. Thank you so much.
Okay. So they are two very embarrassed young men. But let me come to your questions. The Canada question. Look, I think everybody knows that, India is a country where we are very responsible, very prudent on what we do. And the whole issue for us has been that we have always maintained that if any country, not just Canada, if any country has a concern and gives us some input or some basis for that concern, we are always open to look at it. This is what countries do. The point was, when Americans brought up some issues, and the two issues are not, necessarily the same. Let me also say that. When they brought up that issue, the Americans told us some specific things. So, if you look at what happens in international relations, from time to time, such challenges can arise. So, we very sincerely have told the Canadians, saying that, look, it's up to you. I mean, your choice whether you would like us to pursue it further, look into it or not. The second issue, what can digital do for health? Digital is already doing for health. If you look at the whole Ayushman Bharat, initiative, see, what government is trying to do today is to procure, to offer health services and to get medicines and medical devices and medical services on scale, and in a sense, organize who is eligible to what degree is done because it is digitally enabled to do that. But I can see in many, many ways today, digital will profoundly alter our existence. It has already done so, but it will grow more and more, particularly, as I said, once we enter the age of AI. On the third question, I interpreted that question really to say, how do you deal with the world? How do you get close to people and, engage them in different ways? A lot of what happens in diplomacy is obviously you have your goals. I mean, as I said again, if I go back to that first remark, world is competitive. Okay. At one level, everybody competes with everybody. But at another level, people have something in common where they are prepared to work together. The trick in my business is to see which is common and which is competitive, and then find ways of pursuing that in as balanced a way as possible. On environment, there's a sea change in this country when it comes to environment. Look, today, there's a big shift towards renewables. You can see in a variety of ways, we have all got far more environmentally conscious. It's built into policies, the whole idea of today, urbanization, mass transport, our concern about the quality of air, even something like millets. Millets is propagated because it takes less water, and shortage of water today is one of the key environmental problems. So I would put that very much at the center. And the last question, will there be hurdles? Yes, there will be hurdles. There will be hurdles from other competitors. There will be hurdles from ourselves because our own habits, our own lack of ambition, our own imagination, each of these can be a hurdle. As I said, why, in a sense, I told you the story of the last 10 years. The last 10 years is how actually we have overcome hurdle after hurdle in different areas. And that kind of mindset must grow, that confidence we have seen, Ultimately, Bharat is also a state of mind. We will realize Bharat when we are confident. We will realize Bharat when we are sure about what we are. So when we are independent in our thinking, when we are self-reliant in what we do. So for me, that idea of competing and cooperating, they go side by side. They are two sides of the same coin. And I think whether it is, the way we test ourselves at home or whether how we face the world, it really boils down at the end of the day to a society which is motivated, which is aspiring, which is ambitious, which is confident, and which really knows, which is proud of its past, and which is, in a way, very, very desirous for a better future.